She yelled at the wrong millionaire, and shockingly, his mother wanted her as a daughter-in-law. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's tale. It was a busy evening at a high-end New York restaurant, where the clinking of silverware and soft chatter filled the air. Emma Brooks, a waitress, was nervously adjusting her second-hand dress, the frayed edges of her shoes barely noticeable under the dim golden lights of the establishment. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't meant to be in this world of polished perfection, and yet, her best friend Jenny had insisted. "You deserve a night out, Emma," she had said, pushing her toward the blind date. As she walked in, her heart raced. The familiar feeling of being out of place washed over her like a wave. She had promised Jenny she would give it a try. She took a deep breath, looked at her phone again, and muttered, "Table 7. Table 7. Emma's hands trembled as she walked past the elegant tables, her shoes clicking softly against the floor. Her nerves tightened when her eyes landed on a man sitting alone at a table in the back of the room. He was tall, dark-haired, and sharply dressed, with his eyes glued to his phone. This had to be him. She could feel her cheeks flush with embarrassment as she walked over, a forced smile spreading across her face. "Hi, you must be Kevin. I'm Emma. Nice to meet you." The man looked up at her, confusion flashing across his face for a brief moment. Hi, Emma," he replied, clearly not expecting her. But he wasn't Kevin. Emma's stomach dropped. This was the wrong table. She had sat down at the wrong table, and now she had no idea what to do. Before she could apologize and scramble out of her seat, she saw his hesitation. He looked down at his phone, read a text, and sighed. "It's fine," he said, with a soft smile. "I guess blind dates are weird, right?" Emma chuckled awkwardly, realizing the absurdity of the situation. "Tell me about it," she said, trying to fill the uncomfortable silence. She quickly launched into a nervous ramble, talking about how Jenny had set her up on this date, about how she was a waitress, and how she dreamed of someday owning her own art studio. As she spoke, the man, Liam Parker, was more attentive than she had expected. He asked questions, and surprisingly, he seemed genuinely interested. He listened to her stories about working long shifts and dealing with difficult customers. He didn't seem like the typical millionaire or high society man. He didn't boast about his wealth, didn't try to impress her. He simply listened. A flicker of guilt flashed in his eyes as Emma spoke of her struggles. And yet, he never corrected her when she mistook him for Kevin. They talked for what felt like hours. The more she shared, the more she realized that maybe this wasn't a mistake after all. But just as Emma felt like she had started to connect with him, her phone buzzed. Jenny's message popped up. "Where are you?" "I'm at table 7. Emma's face turned bright red as realization hit her like a ton of bricks. "You're not Kevin, are you?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Liam smiled, his eyes softening. "No, I'm not Kevin," he replied, his voice gentle. Emma bolted out of her seat, her heart pounding in her chest. "I'm so sorry. I sat at the wrong table," she stammered, grabbing her coat and rushing toward the exit. But as she reached the door, Liam called after her. "Emma, wait." She froze but didn't turn around. "It's okay," he said, his voice calm. "Really? But, if you're still willing, I'd like to see you again." Emma stood there, her mind spinning. She had made a fool of herself. She had sat at the wrong table, mistaken him for someone else, and now he was offering to meet again? Was this some kind of joke? But despite her better judgment, she found herself glancing over her shoulder. His offer felt genuine, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of hope. Could this be the beginning of something real? Or was she just setting herself up for more disappointment? Either way, she couldn't deny the connection she felt with this stranger who wasn't quite a stranger anymore. She took a deep breath and sent him a quick text, agreeing to meet him for coffee the next day. She had no idea that this seemingly random encounter would change her life in ways she could never have imagined. Stay tuned to find out what happens next. The next day, Emma nervously walked into the small coffee shop Liam had suggested. It was a quiet spot, tucked away from the bustling streets of New York City, the smell of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. As soon as she stepped inside, her eyes scanned the room for him. She saw him sitting by the window, his casual outfit a stark contrast to the sharp suits he had worn the night before. He looked up as she entered, a warm smile spreading across his face. For a moment, Emma hesitated. Was this all a mistake? Had she read too much into their first meeting? But the smile on his face put her at ease. He waved her over, and she couldn't help but smile back as she walked toward him. "Hi, Emma," he said, his voice soft and inviting. "I'm glad you came." She slid into the seat across from him, taking a deep breath as she tried to steady her nerves. "Thanks for inviting me," she replied, her voice a little shakier than she intended. "I didn't think you'd actually reach out after last night." "I couldn't stop thinking about you," Liam said, his expression sincere. Emma felt a strange flutter in her chest. She had been so used to being the one doing the talking, the one making awkward small talk with customers. But with him, it was different. The conversation flowed naturally. They talked about everything: her struggles with finding a stable job, her dream of becoming an artist, and the pressures of living paycheck to paycheck. He listened, really listened, in a way that made her feel heard. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she wasn't just another face in the crowd. But as the conversation continued, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was being left unsaid. Liam wasn't sharing much about himself, at least not the deeper details. She decided to ask, "So what do you actually do? You said tech last night." But she trailed off, unsure if she wanted to hear the answer. Liam hesitated for a moment, his fingers tapping lightly on his coffee cup. "I work in tech. Startups, mostly. But it's not as exciting as it sounds." His tone was casual, but there was a hint of something guarded in his voice. "So you don't like it?" Emma asked, leaning forward slightly. Liam let out a small laugh, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It's not that I don't like it. It's just not what I thought it would be." The silence between them grew, and Emma felt the weight of the unspoken words. She wanted to ask more, to push for answers, but something told her now wasn't the right time. Instead, she changed the subject, asking him about the city, about his favorite places to visit. Liam's face brightened as he spoke, and for a moment, Emma forgot about the underlying tension. She was just a woman talking to a man who seemed to understand her in a way that no one else had. After an hour, they parted ways with a promise to meet again. As she walked back to her small apartment, Emma felt a mix of emotions. She was excited, but also confused. Who was this man really? And why did she feel like there was something more to him than what he was letting on? She couldn't shake the feeling that their paths had crossed for a reason. But what was that reason? What was Liam really looking for? And why did she feel like her life had already started to change in ways she couldn't yet understand? She shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. All she knew for sure was that she was going to see him again. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something she never expected. The next few days passed in a blur for Emma. She and Liam had met for coffee again, and the connection between them only deepened. He seemed to be opening up, little by little, though still, something about him felt off limits, like he was holding back a part of himself. Emma, on the other hand, was beginning to let herself imagine a future with him, despite her better judgment. Maybe it was the way he listened to her, really listened, as if her dreams mattered just as much as his. Or maybe it was the way he smiled at her, as if she had already been part of his life for longer than just a few days. But even as their bond grew, there was still a part of Emma that couldn't shake the feeling that Liam wasn't being entirely honest. He would dodge certain questions or change the subject when things got too personal. It wasn't that he was rude or evasive, but it was clear that he had walls. One evening, after a long day at the diner, Emma found a text from Liam. He wanted to meet her at an art gallery for a charity event he was sponsoring. The message was short and simple, but it stirred something in her. She hadn't expected Liam to invite her to such a high-profile event, not when she was just a waitress. But a part of her couldn't resist. She wanted to see him in this world, the world that seemed so far from her own. When Emma arrived at the gallery, she felt like a fish out of water. The space was grand, the walls adorned with beautiful artwork, and the guests were dressed to the nines. She was wearing a simple dress she had borrowed from Jenny, and her shoes. Well, they were the best she had, but they certainly didn't fit the occasion. As she walked in, she spotted Liam across the room. He looked different here, more confident, more at ease, like he belonged. His tailored suit and polished demeanor were a stark contrast to the man she had met in the coffee shop. When he saw her, his face lit up, and for a moment, Emma felt like she belonged too. "You made it," Liam said, walking over to her with a warm smile. "You look amazing," he added, making Emma blush. "Thanks," she said softly, feeling out of place in the sea of perfectly dressed guests. But Liam didn't seem to notice. He was completely focused on her, his attention unwavering. As they walked around the gallery, Liam explained the different pieces of art, his passion for the cause clear in his voice. Emma listened, intrigued by how much he cared about the world of art, something she had always dreamed of being a part of. But as the night went on, Emma couldn't help but notice how everyone else treated Liam. He wasn't just another guest, he was the man of the hour. People came up to him, shaking his hand, praising him for his generosity. And then, Emma heard it, the whisper of someone's voice as they passed by. "Isn't that Liam Parker? The tech millionaire?" The words hit Emma like a ton of bricks. She had known he was in tech, but millionaire? She hadn't realized just how much money he had. Liam was more than just a guy she met at a coffee shop. He was a man with power, with influence, with an entire life she had never known about. She excused herself and stepped outside for a moment, the weight of the revelation settling on her shoulders. She stood there, looking up at the stars, trying to gather her thoughts. Was this just a game to him? Was he playing with her feelings? Or was she just another one of his charity projects? Before she could sort through her emotions, Liam appeared at the door, looking concerned. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked gently, his eyes searching hers. She forced a smile. "Yeah, just a bit overwhelmed," she admitted. "This is a lot." "I get it," he said, stepping closer. "I didn't mean to put you in that position, but I wanted you to see this side of me, the one I don't often show people." "Why?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I want you to know who I really am," Liam replied, his voice steady. "I'm not just some guy at a coffee shop, and I don't want you to think that's all I am to you." Emma felt a flutter in her chest, the wall she had built around her heart beginning to crumble. Maybe this wasn't just a game. Maybe this was real. But she wasn't sure if she was ready for the truth. As Liam reached out and gently took her hand, Emma knew this was the moment everything was about to change. After that night at the gallery, Emma couldn't stop thinking about Liam. It wasn't just his wealth that made her pause. It was the way he made her feel. For the first time in ages, she felt like someone saw her, really saw her. The layers of vulnerability she had spent years hiding behind were slowly starting to fade, and for once, she didn't feel so alone. But, even with all that, something still nagged at her. Liam was more than just a man with power. He was someone with a world that she couldn't even begin to understand. How could she, a waitress, fit into that world? How could someone like her belong in his high society, where everything was so polished and perfect? She couldn't ignore the unease in her stomach as she walked to the restaurant for her next shift. The diner was a far cry from the glitz and glamour she had seen at the gallery, but it was her reality. As she entered the small, familiar space, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. That afternoon, Liam called. "Hey, Emma." His voice came through the phone, warm and comforting. "I was thinking, I'd love to take you to dinner tomorrow. Just the two of us. No fancy event, no distractions. What do you say?" Emma hesitated, her mind racing. She was still processing everything from the gallery night, and now Liam wanted to take her to dinner? It felt like a dream, but the doubt in her chest was louder than ever. I don't know," she said, her voice shaky. "I'm not sure I belong in your world, Liam." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, Liam's voice softened. "Emma, listen to me. I don't want you to feel out of place. I just want to spend time with you. You're not just some girl I met at a coffee shop. I care about you." His words melted her heart, but they also left her feeling conflicted. Could she really trust him? Was this all real? "I'll think about it," she replied, not ready to give an answer. The next day, Emma couldn't stop thinking about Liam's invitation. The fear of stepping into his world was real, but so was the pull she felt toward him. She had always played it safe, kept her distance from anything that seemed too good to be true. But Liam wasn't like anyone she had ever met. She didn't know what to expect, but something about him felt different. That night, she stood in front of her closet, staring at the dresses she owned. Most of them were from secondhand shops or things she had pieced together. Over the years, she wanted to look nice, but she didn't want to stand out. She finally settled on a simple black dress, one that made her feel comfortable but not overdressed. It wasn't fancy, but it was all she had. When she arrived at the restaurant, Emma felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. It was a high-end place, much like the gallery, but it felt different. This time, it was just the two of them. She wasn't one of the many guests at an event, just an ordinary woman who was meeting a man who seemed anything but ordinary. As she walked inside, she spotted Liam waiting for her at a small table by the window. He stood up as soon as he saw her, and his smile was enough to put her at ease. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. Emma blushed, unsure how to respond. She wasn't used to compliments like that, especially not from someone like him. "Thanks," she said softly, taking her seat. The dinner was simple, yet intimate. They talked about everything and nothing, her favorite books, his travels, the things they both wanted out of life. For the first time, Emma didn't feel like she had to explain herself. Liam didn't care about her past or her struggles. He just wanted to know her. As the night went on, the connection between them deepened. There was a comfort in his presence, an ease that she hadn't felt in a long time. But as the evening came to an end, the reality of their different worlds hit her once again. She wasn't sure where this was headed, but she couldn't deny that for the first time, she was willing to find out. When they said goodbye outside the restaurant, Liam pulled her into a hug. "I'm glad you came tonight," he whispered. "I'm glad I came too," Emma replied, her heart pounding in her chest. For the first time, she felt like she was stepping into something new, something uncertain but full of possibility. She didn't know what the future held, but she was willing to see where it would take her. The days after the dinner with Liam were a whirlwind for Emma. Her mind raced with questions and emotions, and each time she saw him, it felt like a small step further into a world she wasn't sure she belonged to. The more she spent time with him, the more she realized just how much he had to offer. Not just his wealth, but the way he treated her with kindness and respect, the way he seemed to understand her struggles without judgment. But despite all the connection between them, something still held her back. She had always been independent, relying only on herself. She wasn't sure if she could let someone into her world, especially someone like Liam, who had everything at his disposal. As she sat in the small diner, wiping down tables between orders, her phone buzzed. It was Liam. "Hey, Emma, I was thinking about taking a weekend trip to the countryside. Just the two of us. What do you say?" Emma felt a knot form in her stomach. A weekend away? She wasn't sure if she was ready for that kind of commitment. But then she remembered the last time they were together, how easy it had been to talk to him, how he had made her feel like she wasn't alone. Maybe this was exactly what she needed. "Okay," she texted back. "I'll go." The weekend came faster than she expected. They drove to a small, charming house on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by green fields and open skies. The quiet was a stark contrast to the constant noise of New York, and Emma found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. Liam was already there when she arrived, standing outside, his smile wide as she approached. "You made it," he said, his voice warm. "I'm glad you're here." The weekend was filled with long walks, quiet dinners, and deep conversations. They talked about everything, their hopes, their fears, the things they wanted out of life. For Emma, it was the first time in a long while that she felt truly heard. It was as if Liam had become a mirror for her, reflecting back everything she had been too afraid to admit. But as the weekend came to a close, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the edge of something big. She was scared, terrified even, of what this all meant. Could she really trust Liam? Could she truly let herself fall for someone who lived in a world so different from her own? As they drove back to the city, the weight of her thoughts grew heavier. "What are you thinking?" Liam asked, glancing over at her as they drove. Emma hesitated. "I'm just not sure about all of this," she admitted. "I've never been someone who lets people in. I'm used to doing things on my own, you know." Liam's eyes softened, and he reached over, placing his hand gently on hers. "I understand," he said, his voice steady. "But you don't have to do it alone anymore, Emma. I'm here, and I want to be here, with you." His words were simple, yet they struck a chord deep inside her. For the first time, Emma felt like she wasn't just some charity case, some girl from the wrong side of town. She felt like she mattered. As they neared the city, Emma felt a shift within herself. Maybe it was time to stop running from the things she wanted. Maybe it was time to embrace the possibility of something real, something that wasn't just about survival. When they reached her apartment, Liam turned to her before she got out of the car. I'm not going anywhere, Emma, he said softly. I'm not asking you to change who you are. I just want you to give us a chance. Emma met his gaze, her heart racing in her chest. Maybe this wasn't a mistake. Maybe, just maybe, she was ready to let herself be loved. The following week, Emma's world felt like it was shifting beneath her feet. The weekend with Liam had opened up a part of herself she hadn't even realized was closed off. There was a connection between them that she couldn't ignore. But as much as she wanted to dive in, doubts still clouded her mind. Could this really be real? She had lived a life of independence, self-reliance, and uncertainty. Was she ready to let someone else in? The weight of her past still felt heavy, and she didn't know if she could leave it behind. Her phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a text from Liam. Hey, I'm thinking of inviting you to a family dinner this weekend. It's at my mom's house. I'd love for you to meet her. Emma stared at the message, her heart racing. Meeting his mother? She had only just started to figure out this thing with Liam, and now he wanted her to meet his family. She wasn't sure if she was ready for that kind of step. She hadn't even shared her own struggles with him fully, let alone step into a world so far removed from her own. But then, something inside her shifted. Maybe it was the feeling she had every time she was with Liam, like she was seen for the first time. Maybe it was the way he made her feel like she wasn't just a waitress from the wrong side of town. She felt worthy. I'd love to meet her, she typed back, even though her nerves were starting to kick in. The day of the dinner arrived, and Emma stood in front of her small closet, trying to figure out what to wear. She couldn't show up looking out of place. She needed to make a good impression. She finally settled on a simple yet elegant black dress that she had bought on sale months ago. It wasn't fancy, but it made her feel confident. When she arrived at Liam's mother's house, her nerves went into overdrive. The house was stunning, nestled in a quiet part of the city. The large windows let in the golden afternoon light, and everything about the place screamed sophistication and wealth. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she rang the doorbell. Liam opened the door, smiling as he saw her. You look beautiful, he said, his voice full of warmth. Emma blushed, feeling like she was under a magnifying glass. Thanks, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Liam led her into the house, where his mother, Elizabeth, greeted them warmly. Elizabeth was everything Emma had imagined, a poised, elegant woman with an air of confidence that was impossible to ignore. She smiled at Emma, her eyes scanning her for a moment before she reached out to shake her hand. It's so lovely to finally meet you, Emma. I've heard so much about you, Elizabeth said, her voice smooth and welcoming. Emma smiled nervously, trying to hide her anxiety. It's nice to meet you too, she said, though her hands were clammy. The dinner was a lavish affair, with every dish more exquisite than the last. Emma tried to focus on the conversation, but it was hard not to feel out of place. Elizabeth and Liam's family friends talked about their latest business ventures, their travels, and the latest charity events. Emma felt like an outsider, trying to keep up with conversations that seemed to move in a different world than her own. But Liam was there, by her side the whole time, making her feel like she wasn't alone. As the evening went on, Elizabeth watched them closely, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she was being judged. After dinner, as they moved to the living room for dessert, Elizabeth took a seat next to Emma. She looked at her for a moment, as if studying her, before speaking. Liam tells me you're an artist, she said, her voice kind but probing. What kind of art do you create? Emma hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to respond. She had always dreamed of opening her own art studio, but it seemed so far away from the world she was in now. I paint, she said softly, her voice quieter than she meant it to be. I've always loved it, but I haven't had the chance to pursue it full time yet. Elizabeth nodded, her gaze still focused on Emma. You know, I believe in the importance of following your dreams, she said, her tone thoughtful. You never know where they might take you. Emma smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. It was strange, but in that moment, she realized that Elizabeth wasn't as intimidating as she had thought. There was a softness to her, a genuine interest in who Emma was. As the evening wore on, Emma began to feel more comfortable. The conversation shifted, and she found herself laughing along with the others. By the end of the night, she felt like she had been accepted, not just by Liam, but by his family as well. When they left, Liam took her hand and smiled. You did great, he said, his voice full of pride. Emma smiled back, her heart swelling with emotion. Maybe this was the start of something truly real, something that could change her life in ways she never imagined. As the weeks passed, Emma felt her life shifting in ways she hadn't expected. The weekend getaway with Liam had been the turning point she needed to see just how deep their connection went. They had spent hours talking, laughing, and getting to know each other, and the more time she spent with him, the more she realized how much she had come to care for him. But with that realization came a heavy burden of doubt. Could this really work? Could someone like her, a waitress with dreams, but not much else, fit into Liam's world of high society, business deals, and wealth? As much as she wanted to embrace what they had, a part of her was still holding back, scared that it was all too good to be true. She couldn't shake the feeling that at some point, he would realize she wasn't a part of his world. One evening, as they were having dinner at her favorite quiet cafe, Emma found herself lost in thought, her fork idly poking at her salad. Liam was talking about an upcoming business deal he was involved in, but she wasn't really listening. Her mind was elsewhere, on the questions she had been asking herself for weeks. "You okay?" Liam's voice broke through her thoughts, pulling her back to the present. She looked up at him, his concerned eyes studying her face. She tried to smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yeah," she said, her voice soft. "I'm just thinking." He raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "About us," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, Liam. I feel like I don't know if I can be a part of your world. I'm just a waitress. I don't know how to fit in with all of this." She gestured around the restaurant, though it was nothing like the high-end places Liam usually took her. "I'm not like the people you know. I don't have money, I don't have connections, and I don't know if I can keep up." Liam's expression softened, and he reached across the table to take her hand. "Emma, you don't have to be like anyone else," he said, his voice steady. "You don't have to fit into some mold. You are enough just as you are." She shook her head, her heart heavy with uncertainty. "But I'm not enough for you, Liam. You have everything, money, power, connections. I have nothing. What if you wake up one day and realize that?" Liam squeezed her hand, his gaze unwavering. "I don't want anyone but you, Emma. It's not about what you have or don't have. It's about who you are. And who you are is everything to me." Emma felt a lump form in her throat, and, for the first time, she allowed herself to truly believe him. Maybe it wasn't about fitting into his world. Maybe it was about creating their own world, together. But before she could say anything, the sound of a phone ringing broke the moment. Liam's phone buzzed on the table, and he glanced at it before picking it up. "I'm sorry, I have to take this," he said, getting up to answer the call. Emma watched him walk away, her mind still spinning. She didn't know what to make of his words, but for the first time, she felt a flicker of hope. As Liam spoke on the phone, his voice dropping into serious tones, Emma couldn't help but notice how natural it felt to be with him. Even in the face of her fears and doubts, there was something undeniable between them. She wasn't sure where this would lead, but she was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, it could work. Liam returned to the table, his expression slightly more serious than before. "Sorry about that," he said, sitting back down. "That was a business call, but it's handled now." Emma nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "It's okay," she said softly. I need some time to think." "Take all the time you need," Liam replied, his voice gentle. "I'm not going anywhere." Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. Maybe it was time to stop holding back, to stop running from the possibility of something real. As she looked into Liam's eyes, she knew one thing for sure. She was ready to give this a chance, even if it meant stepping into the unknown. For the first time in a long time, Emma allowed herself to feel hope. She didn't know what the future held, but with Liam by her side, maybe she was ready to face it. The following week, Emma found herself at a crossroads. She had spent the last few days thinking about everything that had happened, about Liam's words and the promises he had made. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that she had been holding herself back, afraid of embracing what seemed to be right in front of her. Liam had made her feel like she mattered, like she wasn't just a waitress in a small diner. He made her believe that she was worth more than just her circumstances, more than just the life she had always known. But as much as she wanted to take the leap, something in the back of her mind still hesitated. What if she wasn't good enough for him? What if, in the end, their worlds were too different to reconcile? That night, Liam invited her to a charity event he was hosting. a big gala to support the arts. It was exactly the kind of event Emma had always dreamed of being a part of, but also the kind of event that made her feel out of place. The dress code was black tie, the guest list included high-powered business people, and Emma felt a wave of anxiety rise in her chest. How could she, someone who had never been to a gala, possibly fit in? But Liam had asked her to come, and for the first time in a long time, she realized that she wasn't as nervous about what others would think. She was more concerned about her own insecurities. She needed to face her fears. She needed to stop running from what felt like the first real chance of happiness. As she stood in front of her mirror, adjusting the simple yet elegant gown she had borrowed from a friend, Emma took a deep breath. It wasn't about fitting in. It was about being herself. Liam liked her for who she was, and that was enough. When she arrived at the event, she was immediately struck by the elegance of the venue. The chandelier overhead sparkled, and the room was filled with people in tuxedos and evening gowns, each person looking more polished than the next. Emma felt her heart race as she walked through the room, but then she spotted Liam across the space. His presence was commanding, yet his eyes immediately found hers, and his smile was enough to calm her nerves. As she made her way over to him, Liam's face lit up, and he immediately took her hand in his. "You look incredible," he said, his voice soft and sincere. "I'm glad you came." Emma smiled, though the anxiety still lingered in her chest. "I wasn't sure if I belonged here," she admitted, feeling vulnerable. "But I'm glad I'm here too." Liam's smile grew wider as he led her into the crowd, introducing her to some of his friends and business associates. But as the night went on, Emma realized that she wasn't just a part of the crowd. She was a part of Liam's world. She wasn't pretending to be someone she wasn't. She was simply being herself. And for the first time, she realized that was more than enough. As the night went on, Liam pulled her aside to the terrace, away from the noise and the chatter. The city skyline stretched out before them, the lights twinkling like stars. "You're doing great," Liam said, his voice steady and reassuring. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone here. You're here because I want you here." Emma felt a wave of warmth wash over her at his words. It was as if, in that moment, she could finally breathe. "Thank you, Liam," she said, her voice soft. "I don't know what I'm doing half the time, but with you, it feels like maybe I don't need to have it all figured out." Liam smiled, stepping closer to her. "You don't," he said. "You're not alone in this. You don't have to do everything on your own anymore." The way he looked at her, so full of warmth and sincerity, made her heart swell. She had never felt more seen, more accepted, than she did in that moment. Maybe, just maybe, this was where she was supposed to be. Emma leaned in slightly, closing the distance between them, as Liam gently placed his hand on her cheek. The air around them seemed to grow still, and for the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. She wasn't just part of Liam's world. She was part of something real, something that had the potential to change everything. As Liam's lips met hers, Emma felt the weight of her doubts lift. She didn't have to be perfect. She didn't have to have everything figured out. All she had to do was trust him, trust herself, and let go of the fear that had held her back for so long. And in that moment, she knew she was ready for whatever came next. As the months passed, Emma found herself in a place she never expected. What started as a chance encounter with Liam, a man from an entirely different world, had blossomed into something real, something that felt solid and sure. She had come to understand that love wasn't about fitting into someone else's life. It was about making space for each other, accepting the differences, and finding a way to grow together. Her fears and doubts had slowly melted away as she let go of the walls she had built around herself for so long. Liam had never once asked her to change, never made her feel like she was anything less than enough. And that realization had changed her completely. She wasn't just the waitress she had always thought she was. She was someone who deserved love, respect, and happiness, just like anyone else. One afternoon, as they sat together in the quiet of Liam's office, discussing the future and their shared dreams, Liam stood up suddenly, walking around the desk to her. His eyes were soft, but there was an intensity to his gaze that made Emma's heart skip a beat. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've been thinking a lot about the future, about us, and I want you to know that no matter what happens, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I want to spend my life with you." Emma's breath caught in her throat. Was this really happening? Had they really come this far from the woman who had doubted herself sitting in the coffee shop? She stood up slowly, her eyes meeting his, a sense of peace washing over her. I want that too, she whispered, feeling tears prick at the corner of her eyes. Liam smiled, that familiar warmth spreading across his face. I know, and I've been thinking about how I want to take this step with you, how I want to show you how serious I am. Emma, will you marry me? The words hung in the air, a beautiful, life-changing question. Emma's heart swelled as she looked at Liam, a man who had seen her for who she truly was. A man who had loved her without expectations or judgment. She had never thought she would find someone like him, never thought she would be the one someone wanted to build a future with. And yet, here they were, at the edge of something incredible. Without hesitation, Emma nodded, her voice full of emotion. Yes, yes, I will marry you. Liam stepped forward, taking her hands in his. The world outside the office seemed to fade as they stood there, both overwhelmed by the gravity of the moment. For the first time in her life, Emma felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. She had found her place, not in someone else's world, but in a world they had built together. As Liam leaned in to kiss her, Emma knew that this was just the beginning. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape, to build, and to live together.